Okay, well, this dirty fighting technique is the last of the series. It is my personal favorite, and I think pretty many of you are going to be familiar with it as well. As a matter of fact, in this day and age, so many of us, sadly, are experts in sarcasm. Yep, sarcasm, one of my favorites. I have always considered myself a very good purveyor of some sarcasm. I can rock that stuff. But most people are like, well, wait a minute, I like sarcasm. It's funny. It is a form of humor, but sometimes sarcasm is funny and actually intended as humor. And oftentimes, though, when we're using it specifically against someone else, it is a dirty fighting technique. So let me tell you the difference. Sarcasm comes from the Greek word sarkasmos, which means to tear flesh. Just sit with that for a minute. Every time you use sarcasm, you're tearing someone's flesh. If I'm a comedian and I'm doing stand-up, funny. If I'm talking to my spouse, not so funny. My sibling, my coworker. Now, what is sarcasm? So sarcasm is saying the opposite of what you mean or answering a question with a question. Hey, what are we doing for dinner? Well, what do you think we're doing for dinner? Well, if I freaking knew what we were doing for dinner, I wouldn't have asked you, right? So it starts this like attitude thing. To saying the opposite of what you mean, like, no, really, have another donut. I'm sure your jeans won't mind at all, right? There's some sarcasm that we always use, like, you're so smart. Why didn't I ask you before? You know everything, right? So you're probably thinking, yeah, that's kind of funny, right? Okay, it is funny, but it's not helpful. It's funny to you. But what it actually does is, just like all these other dirty fighting techniques, it deflects from the issue. And it further, like in its definition, it's tearing the other person down. No, really, I like your driving. Please just go and ride the tail of that car in front of us. We're going to have really a lot of fun in the emergency room. Right, so I'm saying the opposite because I think I'm just really cute and funny. Because we don't know. And here's the excuse, but here's your problem, right? If you use this, is you don't know how to communicate seriously, like I'm really scared if we drive too closely to the cars in front of us. So we use sarcasm as like a way of, let me just, attack you instead, like, go ahead, drive like you always do. I'm sure the police department needs more monies for tickets. So I've given several examples of sarcasm, and I think you can tell why it can hurt the other person. So let me give you a little bit deeper understanding of when it's acceptable, when it's not. So sarcasm is absolutely hysterical and funny when it's not directed at a certain person. You can watch it on TV, you can laugh when the comedians do it, and they make jokes. Or, I'm saying, oh yeah, great weather outside today, as it's pouring out and things like that. It can be funny. We can use our wit. God gave us sarcasm. It's a funny thing. But when, again, you're naming someone, you're directing it towards someone, it's not funny. It's hurtful. And I don't know if many of you know this, but I have my PhD in communication, but marriage communication specifically, but my doctoral dissertation was entitled Humor as a Communication Strategy in Military Marriage. You can take the military context out if you want, because it really is the same in all marriages, but I wanted to study a more happy element of marriage. I didn't want to study depression. I didn't want to study abuse. I didn't want to study the tough stuff. So as I studied humor in marriage, one of the things that I discovered is that there are 3 types of humor: positive humor, negative humor, and instrumental humor. Positive humor, as you can tell, is, when I say something funny that actually makes the other person laugh. And when that is you might be having your spouse might be having a rough day and you'll just crack a joke and they'll laugh because it reminds you of, my husband and I have kind of positive humor. We used to watch this show, Don't Judge Me, when we were young and newlyweds, Revenge of the Nerds. And one of the characters used to say lobster claws with an Asian accent, and he'd go, oh, lobster claws, right? And it was so funny, especially the line that came right after that, which I won't, say on this show right here. But my husband and I, every now and then, if I'm in a bad mood, he'll be like, lobster craws. That's funny, at least to the two of us it is, because we have our own inside humor, as every good marriage does. You know, they start building on history. No one else would get that but us. So positive humor, by the way, in the research, my research as well as others, has found that as the levels of positive humor increase, so does marital satisfaction. So there's a positive correlation between the use of positive humor and a happy marriage. But then there's negative humor. Negative humor is humor that attacks or kind of breaks down, and sarcasm is one of those negative humor. Funny thing is, there's differences in humor so much. You probably don't understand how much humor research is out there. There is actually gender differences in humor. Men, more than women, tend to use what we call aggressive or negative humor. They tend to use more sarcasm. Why? Because in the male circles, they can, hey Joe, looking really kind of rotten there, huh? Or, have that donut, dude, and the guys will laugh. They can blow it off because of the way the male brain is structured, which I'll talk about sometime. And they don't take it too seriously. So what happens oftentimes is men will come home and use negative humor with their wives. Well, we aren't digging it. Women don't use negative humor, or we don't like it as much as men do. And so if you use the same kind of tactics in your marriage as you do at work, it's going to backfire. And men don't often understand, well, why aren't you laughing? It was meant to be funny. You're taking things too personally. Again, any video I do, don't say, well, that's not true. My family, my gender. Got it. But this is most of the time. These are statistically significant differences. Males tend to use aggressive humor more than women. Sorry. And sarcasm is one of them. So one of the things I teach in the class is how not to use sarcasm, because if you're using something that's tearing down the other, it's also a form of protecting yourself, right? Well, I'll just go ahead and use that and attack you. It deflects the issue, doesn't get resolved, but it protects you, right? It's like, you're gonna take another half, let's go back to my donut joke. You go ahead and eat another donut. You need it. What'd you just call me fat? I didn't call you fat. You putting that words in my mouth? I didn't say that. So what sarcasm does is it allows you to say what you really want to say, but not take responsibility for it. I didn't call you fat. That's on you. Don't blame me. Yeah, you did. You used sarcasm. It was wrong, and it's a cop-out. So negative humor was found that as negative humor increases, marital satisfaction decreases. Makes perfect sense, right? The third form of humor is instrumental humor. And this one here is something a lot more people use in good ways, bad ways, than they realize. So instrumental humor is when I use humor to kind of get something. What a lot of people do in their marriages, and again, I'm going to go with men because this is more so with men, is if a conflict, if an issue is getting to a place that's uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with that, they'll crack a joke. Let's just say it's positive humor. It's not sarcasm. It's not attacking the person, but all lobster craws, right? And what happens in instrumental humor is, okay, say my husband and I were having a fight and then he said lobster craws and then I'd laugh and it would the issue doesn't get resolved. See, I'll say my husband in this example. So my husband would be using that to be like, oh, I don't want Christine to be mad. I don't want to call father. Let's just laugh. Oh my gosh, it's good. Whoo, dodged a bullet. But what we'll find is that if we keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that, you realize, wait a minute, my husband's always making me laugh, but I don't feel good about this. And then you realize over time, well, that's right, because these issues aren't getting resolved because he's always deflecting them with humor. So that's a positive use of humor, but it's still being instrumental to stop the argument, to stop the discussion, to stop from getting to a resolution. So sometimes instrumental humor is going to be positive. My husband and I, when we bicker, right? We bicker publicly. And every now and then, when we do that, my sister-in-law will go, "Love is a any splendor thing. And she'll be so funny. And we'll be like, because she's just saying, this is my way of, guys, don't let it heat up. Just don't bicker. We know you love each other. So she's using humor, but it's positive humor. And it's instrumentally stopping us from bickering in public. So I bet you learned more about humor right now than you ever thought you'd know before. Gosh, go read my dissertation. It's a great weekend book, right? You can find it in any PhD library near you, right? Any academic library. Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I don't know. But even if you don't read my dissertation, understand, do you use humor? Do you use it right? Do you use it negatively, positively? Are you using it instrumentally? But more so, are you using it as a dirty fighting technique? I want to attack you. I'll use humor. I don't want to take responsibility for it, so I'm going to be sarcastic. And if you take everything I just said and realize, because again, my family's very sarcastic, and I'm like, oh, I love me some sarcasm. And when I teach this in my classes, people are like, oh, I love sarcasm. But when I say, but seriously, if this woman, this man next to you is a person you said, I love this person more than anyone in the whole world, why would you want to hurt them? Why would you purposely want to tear their flesh? Who is that protecting? It's protecting you and hurting them. When you protect you at another person's expense, that's not love. It's not love. Yeah, conflict is not comfortable because the vast majority of you watching this video, the vast majority of people alive today didn't come from healthy homes where communication was taught properly, where handling conflict was a skill set that was passed on to us. So I've just given you about 14 different dirty fighting techniques. Go back on the videos, take a look. Which ones do you use? And what I'd like you to do is what I tell my students in my class. I want you to pick which of these dirty fighting techniques you need to fix. And I have you pick which one do you use most often? And you can commit to using it less often. Don't say never, because you're an imperfect human being. You'll just feel bad if you use it and you shouldn't have. But just say to yourself less often. And if you catch yourself using that dirty fighting technique, then take the next step and say, you know what, sorry, Sally, I'm so sorry. I was sarcastic. I wasn't supposed to. Can I have a do-over? But I want you to go through these dirty fighting techniques: blaming, sarcasm, leaving, asking why, and any of the various other dirty fighting techniques I put out. Which one do you do most often? So the ones you should minimize is this: either the one you do most often, the one that's easiest for you to fix, because it's like, oh, I do too many of them. Let me at least give myself some credit and just get rid of the smaller one. Or the one that is most detrimental to your relationship. The one that's like your spouse says, if you do that one more time, I'm leaving. I'm not going to talk to you. Because you, again, all of you watching this video, you need to take responsibility for how you're handling it. And I know who watched my video. You're like, but my spouse is such a jerk. My spouse should be watching your video. I know. But they're not. And we're not perfect. And all God expects is that you do your part. Even if 90% of the fault is on your spouse. If you can fix your 10% and you can answer to God one day and be like, I did all I can do. The rest was on you, Lord. Then you can enter heaven with a clear conscience. But don't let the devil get you. Don't let him just start with that 10%. Goes to 20 and then 30 and 40, because when he's got a grip on our flesh, that's an open door and we just get worse. So all of these dirty fighting techniques have been fun to film, of course, but mostly so they can help you. I want your marriage to thrive and survive, especially in this day and age where marriage is under assault. Do your part. Get rid of the dirty fighting. Find a good way to communicate. And you can build your marriage. My next videos are going to be talking about positive ways. Instead of these negative ways, I'll be talking about things like how to properly express your emotion, how to use I statements, which again, many of you have heard about, but a lot of us don't hear about them properly. I'm here to help. I'm imperfect. My marriage almost failed. I've made all the mistakes, but we're working on our 40th anniversary this year. 40 years that man has stuck with me, and it's enjoyable. We look forward to each other's company in ways that we never could have imagined back in the days when I hated him and wished he was dead and we were fighting every day. If our marriage can be transformed like that, so can yours. No, so can yours. Whether you're dealing with abuse, pornography, infidelity, addictions. I've seen everything transformed. Everything. So don't think not yours, because yours can be transformed too. Look me up. Let's work through this together. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. This is Breakfast with Bacon, and you can find me there at breakfastwithbacon.com. Now go on out and use your sarcasm rightly. Make your spouse laugh. Don't attack them. All right? Have a good one.